Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Art 195, 3D modeling for animation for the spring semester 2022. We're working on the Reboot character. Today, we're continuing to work on it. I built the head on Monday. Today, we're going to go ahead and we're going to build his shoulder and arms. So if I come back over here, let's move the Numeric Requester and we zoom out to look at his image, the image of him. Unfortunately, in Lightwave, every time you open up the file, you have to put the image back in. And if you've forgotten how to do that, you hit D for display. Make sure that background backdrop is selected. We want this image to be put in the bottom left. So I make sure that is selected. And then where it says image, you go ahead and you load the image. And throughout, building your model, you can put, use as many different kinds of images that as you need. Ideally, you have kind of a sketch with a top view, front or back, front view, and right view. So from all three perspectives, you can get a pretty accurate a sense of proportions and what the character looks like or supposed to look like in 3D. So anyway, that's that. Now, one of the things that I did the other day, because I wasn't happy with the proportions of it, and you can always tweak this. Like I said, when I wanted to make the top and the bottom and the left and the right a little bit more balloony or bulby, I switched to points, for example, make sure that I had points selected. And let's start with the top. I'll select the bottom point, and I'm going to go ahead and hold down the Shift key and select. I'm going to deselect to make sure that everything that I'm selecting what I want. There you go. Select that point and that one. And you can see because I'm in subpatch mode, they are not directly on the object itself. And now what I want to do, if I want to make it fatter or thinner, a good tool to use right now would be the stretch tool. So that would be H for stretch. And then I would go over to the right view or the back or front view. That would be the ideal one because I can only stretch it up or down. And because I want it to stretch straight up and straight down, I would hold down the Control key. And I can click and drag, and you can see how it's affecting it. Likewise, if I want to move it, it'd be key for move, and I would move it out. So I'm going to undo that. But the one thing that I noticed the other day about the guy that one that I had created is that the outer border here, frame, was a little bit too fat. And if I compared it to the one in the photograph here, it was a little bit thinner. So that was very doable. Now to do that, what I did is, let's go ahead and turn off stretch. I selected, come on. Make sure that turn off. There we go. Oh, I don't have polygons selected. That would be helpful. There we go. Select these 4 polygons here. Now, if there's only one in the center, whatever, there's a variety of ways of doing this, but I want to expand the selection. So if I hold down the Shift key and I hit the right curly brace, notice that it expands the selection. If I hold down the Shift key and I hold down and I click on the left curly brace, it reduces the selection. So I'm going to go all the way up to the frame. And then what I did, all the way up to that black frame. And then what I did is I used Shift H for size, and then make sure that the size is using the action center of selection. And then if I click and I drag and I pull it in, notice the difference that I can have in appearance. Okay, now the frame, the border out here is much bigger. So you can go back and we can tweak all of these things. The trick is to try to keep the symmetry and intact. And I've kind of gone out of, it's not as symmetrical as I would like it to be, especially up here at the top. You can see that this is moved in and away. But I'm gonna, for right now, I'm happy with it. I'm just gonna leave it be. So I'm gonna turn off, let's move, deselect it. And now let's go ahead and let's work on the shoulders and the arms. And that's what we'll get done today. So some of the new tools that we will introduce is what, or some of the tools that we've already used, but we will use again too, will be the Bevel tool. We're going to go ahead and we're going to look at different ways of tapering. And we're also going to use the pull tool that will allow us to bulge the arms here. And then we're going to go back and we're going to make his hands or little mittens here. And we'll use the organic modeling, the same as we did here. Now, at any time, if you want to go back and you just want to hit the tab key, you can. And that's what this looks like when you turn that off. Now, it looks like I have, maybe there's a, that's a 4-pointed poly. So this is a non-planar here. So there's something that I did wrong in a couple of these instances that I wouldn't want a non-planar. I would probably want to fix that. Okay. And then if I hit the tab key again, it goes back. So whichever mode you feel comfortable working in, that's what you need to do. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer. And we're going to put this one in the background so that I have it for position and proportions and reference. So let's start by building the shoulder. So the shoulder, in fact, is nothing more than a cylinder. Okay, so I'll select the disk tool. And then from the right view, I'm going to go ahead and click over the center here and click and drag. Hold down the control key again, and that will constrain the proportions. And now I'm going to, from the top view, pull it out just a little bit like so. And then moving over the center, I might, moving over the center, I'm going to move it, hold down the control key to make sure that it's centered over that and let it overlap just a little bit. Okie doke. It's pretty big. So I'll go ahead and I'll deselect and I have it in place. So this goes quickly, but you'll notice that it tapers a little bit. It comes up from this edge and comes up and it tapers a little. So how can I do that? Well, that's where we're going to use the Bevel tool again. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I have under my selections here that I have polygon. I'm going to go ahead and select the top polygon, and I'm going to go ahead and hit B for Bevel, B, and just click anywhere in any one of these quadrants. And I've added geometry to this. So now what I can do is I can go ahead and I can hit now Resize. So that would be Shift H, and then click and drag from the center of the selection, and it pulls it in a little bit. And again, when you have it resized from the center of the selection, I can use any quadrant to do that. That won't be the case later on. Okay, with the quadrant that I choose will be important. So now that I've stretched it in a little bit, I can hit T for move, and I can hold down the control key to pull it out just a little bit like so. And you can see that here is, I have the shoulder as it is in here. Now, this probably could be a little bit thinner. It's not as fat as I've indicated here. So we can always change the proportions. Let me go ahead and I have move tool selected. So I'm going to hit T for move, deselect, and I'm going to make it a little bit narrower. So there's a variety of ways of doing that. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the back polygon, and I'm going to hit T for move. And I'm going to move it out a little bit so it's a little bit thinner, like so. and then deselect, and hit T for move again, and I'm just going to move the whole thing back. Now, I'm not worried about the other side just yet, because they're at the very end, we're going to go ahead and we're going to use another tool that will allow us to mirror the whole thing. So we've created our shoulder. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new layer once again. When I get the entire shoulder and arm and hand completed, then I will put them on the same layer as the head. But before I do, I will mirror it, and then we'll put them on all on the same layer, which is kind of assembling it the way that you would see in or do with kind of an IKEA piece of furniture. Okay, so I'll go ahead and I'll select a brand new layer, put this one and this one, hold down the shift key in the background so I can see what I'm doing here. Okay, now create a shoulder, very simple, just using a sphere. So we're going to use the ball tool, and I like orienting it from the side view. Okay, so I'll click on a drag, hold down the control key, and that looks about right. And I'm going to go ahead and click and drag. Again, like so. I'm holding down the control key as I do this. Now I'm going to move it in place, trying to make sure that it's all centered up. And it's just a little bit more than half that's out there. And if I need to, I'll zoom in a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. Now, if I want, I can get rid of the back half of this. So once it's fixed, and it's up to you, what you want to do is that with polygons selected, I can go ahead and I can right click around the back end of this like so. Okay, and I can go ahead, or let's deselect and let's take one more row out of that. Typically, I just leave it intact, but we'll go ahead here. I'm going to select all of these here. No, one more time. I'm right clicking and dragging it around there. And I'm specifically using, I could either use the back view, but the top view, but the back view has the image, so it's kind of harder to see. So I'm using the top view to select those polygons, and now I can just go ahead and hit Command X to cut them, because I'll never see them. On the other hand, later on, if this is something that you would want to animate in, then I would probably keep it. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to put it back in. But for a static image, you would probably want to leave it in place. But if I'm rotating his arm, you're going to see other parts of that shoulder or that joint. So let's go ahead and leave it in place. The next one that we're going to create, now before I do, I'm going to go ahead and actually I'm going to go back to this layer. And I'm going to go ahead and something that I tell you to always do is to make sure that you put a placeholder surface in place. So I'm going to hit Q, and we already have the gold in place. So I'm going to go ahead and select gold. Okay. And then let's go back to the joint here. And this is going to be a new surface. This is going to be chrome. So I'm going to hit Q, and we're going to just use the preset chrome surface. So I'll name chrome, and I'll leave it gray, okay, just for the heck of it. And now what I can do is I can start to join these elements together. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this element, go back and select the shoulder again, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Command V. So that's in place. Now I can go back again and I'll select a new layer, put that one in the background, and now I'm ready to build his upper arm. So what I want to use for the upper arm is just a simple cylinder again, nothing more, nothing less. So I'll use the disk tool, and then let's zoom in here in the right view. And I'm going to go ahead and click and drag, hold down the command key. Okay. And I'm not sure how big this needs to be at the moment. So I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to pull this out a little bit. Okay. And I'm looking at the top end here. I will move it in position, overlapping part of the joint. Okay. It looks about the right proportion. It looks about the right length. Okay. So I'll leave it as is. I'm going to leave the default settings, 24 sides, one segment. And then I'll go ahead and I'll turn off the disk tool. However, you'll notice that it tapers. So I have two options. Do I use the taper tool, or do I just simply rotate around and select the end cap for that and hit Shift H for size? And I'll go ahead now and I'll just go ahead and resize it a little bit. And then that enables me to taper it. Okay. Now I could have used the taper tool, but this is just as easy, just as effective, I think. Okay, that looks about right. So now we're ready to build another joint. But before I do, I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift H for to turn off resize. And I'm going to deselect the polygon, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Q and add my surface texture. So this one again is going to be gold. And I've got that one done. So again, I'm building the arm piece by piece. So I'm going to go ahead and hit cut. And I'm going to go back to my other layer, and I'm going to go ahead and hit paste. And now let's go back again to the new one, to a new layer, and let's hit the the background layer, hold down the shift key and do that for there too. And now we can go ahead and we can create another joint, and I'll add that. And then the tough part will be building the forearm and the hand. Okay, so they're not hard, but they're just for someone who's new to Lightwave. It will be a little bit foreign to you. So again, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in from the right view. And I'm going to select the little ball here. Let's select the ball tool. And again, I'm going to orient it along the right side here. And I'm going to go ahead and click and drag and hold down the control key so that it's perfectly round. And then let's go ahead and click and drag here. And I don't know if it's the right size yet, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to move it over in position, zoom back in, move it over. So I'm working on a laptop here. So I want to make sure that my sizes and proportions are right. So oftentimes I need to zoom out and zoom back in, make this a little bit larger, like so. And let's make sure that it's overlapped. Okay, that's looking pretty good. About the right proportions. I'll go ahead and I'll fix it. I'm going to go ahead and actually let's go ahead and hit T for move. And I'm going to go ahead and move it over just a little bit. There we go. Because part of the upper arm was, the corner of it was visible. So turn off move. Again, hit Q. And we already have Chrome. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And again, we have a placeholder for that part. I'm going to do what I've done a few times already now. I'm going to go ahead and hit cut, Command X. go back to this layer and hit Command V for paste. And now I'm ready to build the forearm. Now the forearm is a little bit different. Okie doke. If I need to go back and I need to resize these pieces individually, I can always do that. I can isolate them and resize, reproportion them. I'm trying to get a pretty good sense at the time, though, of what I need to do. And so as I'm looking at this, I think I might want to make the end here a little bit narrower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and I'm going to drag here, select a handful of polys. Then I'm going to go to select and I'm going to say select connected. And because it's in the way of the upper arm, what I want to do is under, let's see where it is. It's under selection. What I want to do is, no. Where are we here? I want to hide the selection. Is it under setup? No. It's under view. There we go. What I want to do is I want to hide selected. It doesn't delete it, it just hides it. So now what I'll do, I'll select the end polygon and again hit Shift H. And I'll make it just a little bit smaller. That's good. Shift H to end that. Move over in the lower left-hand corner to deselect. Now what I want to do is unhide. Now the ball is a little bit too big. So I need to make sure that all of it is selected again. So I'll select a handful of polygons. I'll go to select connected, and I'll go Shift H again. And I'm going to resize it just a little bit, make it a little bit smaller, the whole thing. Now it looks a little bit better. I'm good to go. Shift H. So at any time, when you notice that maybe it isn't working quite like you think it should, pause, remake part of it, and then make your adjustments and then come back. It will be much more difficult when you're finished with the model to come back and make those adjustments. But while I'm building it, I can do that. That was the same with the head. I can tweak proportions right now. Next step is to now go ahead is create a new layer. Put this one in the background. I'll maybe hold down the Shift key and put the other in the background. I like just getting a sense of the whole thing. And I'm going to go ahead and again, I'm going to use under create. I'm going to go ahead and use the disk tool again. And let's zoom in a little bit so I can see what I'm doing here. And I'll click and I'll drag like so. And I want to make sure that they are the same. So I'm going to go ahead here. And this is point, I'll just make it 0.2, whatever I want it to be, inches. And I'm going to go ahead again, and I'm going to make that 0.2. I didn't do that for the others because I was holding down the control key. So that should make everything, whoops, 0.2, and then double quotes for inches, because I'm working in inches right now. Now we'll go ahead and we'll pull this out like so. Zoom out and move it in place and see if it's the right proportion, and it probably needs to be a little bit thicker. So I'm going to go ahead from here and I'm going to hold down the control key and click it. Whoa, make it a little bit smaller. Let's create the right width. And it's about the same. Where this starts is about the same as where the upper arm ends. And now I'll stretch it out. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And I'm doing that from the top view. Okay. And it probably could be, again, looking at proportions here. And that looks pretty good. Let me go ahead and hit the control key, make it a little bit smaller again. I think I made it too big. That looks about right. Let me stretch it out again. Oh, come on. It's a little bit under 0.2 inches on mine. And again, I just want to make sure that it's nice and round. So the radius, the X and the Y, hold on here. Oh, I just really goofed things up. Clicking in the wrong place here. So forgive me, please. Let's go ahead and fix this. Let's go ahead and, you know what? Just delete it, do it again. When you got problems like that, just come back in here and fix it. Let's select the disk tool again. Click and drag. Want it about like so. Let's make sure that it's the same. So I'm going to go ahead and use a spinner this time and make sure that I'll make it 0.18. So 0.18 inches, the tab key. Again, I want to make sure that it's perfectly round. So 0.18 inches. There we go. I'm going to stretch it out. So zoom out a little bit from the center, move it into place, and it's too small. What can I say? Let's stretch it out. I'm going to get it the correct length, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the spinners to make it the right diameter. That looks like that's about the right distance there. If I need to make it smaller, I can. So let's make it 0.2 again. And that'll have to do for today. And I'll tweak it if it doesn't work. There we go. Okay, so I'm not done. It looks like it's about the right proportions for the forearm. Maybe a little bit longer. We can always play with that. Stretch it out just for the heck of it, in case I need to make it smaller. But you'll notice this is a key point in the demonstration here. I want to make his forearm kind of have like Popeye forearms. Okay, they bulge a little bit. In order to do that, if I know that I'm going to deform it in some way, I need along the segments. I can't just have one. I need to chop it up into more segments in order to deform it. Similar to what I showed you to the screen or his on Monday. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a whole boatload of segments here. I'm just going to go all the way up to like 48. Okay, and that gives me a really fine mesh. Now, if you forget to do that or you don't do that, you will not be able to use the tool that I'll be using in a second. Okay, so I've got my forearm and now I'm ready to make it kind of balloony. Well, where that is found is under modify. And it's under more, because we have stretch, we have size, we have transform, we have axis scale, we have a taper, we have a whole bunch of them. But I want it down here under more. And it's the pole evenly tool. There's the pole tool, which is kind of like stretch. And there's the pole evenly, which is like size. I want pole evenly right now. And then what I want to do with my numeric requester is make sure that I have the fall off selected. I want radial. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make it a nice smooth parabola. So I'm using this slider at the top to do that. And now what I need to do that is I right click and I drag. And I'm going to do that from the back view. And I'm also going to do it from actually all three views. I'm going to stretch it out a little bit. And I'm going to stretch this out a little bit from here so that it's completely encasing that forearm area. Okay, let's look at it here so you can see the little bubble around it. Okay, I hope everybody can see that. And now what I want to do from the right view is I want to left click and drag. And you'll notice that it creates a little balloon. It's like blowing air into it and creating the little bubble for ourselves. Okay. And now I want to use that again for the other part of his arm here. And it won't be quite as much. So I'll right click and drag it down like so. And again, from the right view, left click and drag. Make this a slight little bulge here. So it looks a little bit more like the one in the photograph. Okay, I'm satisfied with that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go down under more where it says pull evenly. I'm going to go ahead and deselect it. And I have my forearm now. Okie doke. So that's how we've taken a basic cylinder, and knowing that we want to deform it, we have to add geometry, add segments ahead of time. And then in this particular instance, I use the pull evenly tool to make it kind of balloony. Okay, a little bit fatter. So the last thing that I'm going to do now is I need to, now that that's selected, is I'm going to go ahead and hit Q. And I'm going to make it the gold again. Is now I'm ready to put that on the other layer, Command X. Put it on this layer here, Command V or Control V if you're on the PC. And we're going to go again and hold on here. There we go. Let's zoom in here on perspective view so I can see what I'm doing here. And I think the proportions are correct. If I need to change them at any time, then I can. Of them individually if I want, by selecting a handful of polygons and then going ahead and resizing it. So, you know, saying select connected and then resize. So it may be the case that, you know, my upper arm here is a little bit too long. So I will change that a little bit later. But for today, I think, you know, this will be fine. But the last thing that I wanted to do today is I wanted to make the hand. So the hand is a little unique. Again, it's a same way that you would actually start building a head. It's really no different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, again, a brand new layer. Hold down the Shift key and put these layers in the background. And then from the right view, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by using the box tool. So let's go under Create. I'm going to use the box tool and make sure that I have the Numeric Requester up. And I'm going to click and drag like so. And then I'm going to pull it out just a little bit. Let's go ahead and pull that out just a little bit like so. And let's zoom in a little bit so I can go ahead and zoom in here. And I'm going to pull it over, zoom back out, pull it over. And maybe I'll make it a little bit wider. Not much, but a little. Well, that's a little bit thicker. Close enough for right now, okay? Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and make it a little bit narrower. And I could always play with proportions later on, but that's good for right now. But now what I want to do is I want to add segments, similar to what I had done with the forearm, but not to that extent. I'm going to go ahead and add one along the X. So we'll have a total of 2 segments, one along the Y. So we have 2 segments and one along the Z. So we have 2 segments. Now, when we look at it from perspective view, okay, and we zoom in here a little bit, you can see that it's subdivided. Okie doke. So now what I want to do is I'm ready to build his thumb and his little mitten hands. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the box tool, and I'm going to select just this polygon here, which is for his thumb. And what I want to do is I want to hit the bevel tool to add geometry, and then I can on any quadrant click just once, and then hit T for move, and either from the top view, that would be a good one. Also from the back view, I can click and I can drag and I can pull it out. So I've added geometry. Now I have his thumb built. Okay. Okay, turn off move, deselect. And now what I want to do is I want to select the 2 polys that I'm going to use for the mitten part here. So select these 2. I'm just clicking and dragging. If you forget to click and drag, and you click one and you release the mouse, and then you try to click again, hold down the shift key and it will allow you to select it. Likewise, if you click over it, it will deselect it. So that's sort of important. But because I have 2 and I want them to behave as 1, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use smooth shift. So under multiply, I switch and I use smooth shift. Click anywhere, hit T for move, and pull it out. And now I have his mitten hand. Now, there are parts of this that need to be reconfigured. Okay, so let's look at the proportions of it, see how I'm doing here. That probably needs to be a little bit longer, so I'll pull it out a little bit more. Okay, so I'm good to go. I'll turn off T for move. I'm going to deselect the polygons. And now what I'm going to do, because it looks pretty rigid, it doesn't look soft and blobby, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit the tab key. Now you can see it's turned into my little mitten hand here. Okay, and it's pretty close to the right proportions. Probably the only thing that I'd want to do though, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit D for display and backdrop. Under bottom left, I'm going to, for the time being, say none, so you guys can see this. But anytime you want to select a whole row of points or polygons, sometimes it's best if you use wireframe, because if I switch to points and I select the top point here, notice that I've selected all the ones behind it too. So now when I hit T for move and I pull this forward a little bit to create that appearance, it looks pretty good. Likewise, I can turn off move, deselect, select these points and hit T for move and pull that out a little bit. Now these probably need to be T for move, deselect. This probably doesn't need to be quite so much. Move that back just a little bit. Yeah, there we go. So now I have my glove. Now, if it needs to be a little bit fatter, let's turn off T for move. If I want it to be fatter, then hit H for stretch. And then from the top view, make it a little bit fatter, like so. P for move it into place again, and I'm good to go. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is I'm going to hit Q. We need to create a new surface, and this is going to be a red surface, so I'll just name it red. Okay, and we want our initial color to be red, so pick a nice deep red. And I click OK. And there you have it. Now what I can do is I can go ahead and I can cut it. And I can go ahead and go back to my back layer, and back one here, and paste it. Now it's in place. Looking at this, the proportions are off a tad. So I'm going to come back after class and I'm going to tweak it. So in the meantime, though, what we want to do is we want to mirror this and make another one on the other side. So I need to, since all of these are on one layer, I'm going to put this one on his head and the background here. And with all of these on the same layer now, I can use under modify. Actually, it's under multiply. I'm sorry. I can go ahead, and here's the mirror tool right here. Now, there's also variations of that. I can mirror it along the X, Y, or Z, or we can also clone it to create multiple copies. I just want to select mirror. Okay, and then let's zoom out along the top view. And let's go ahead and click. And there you have it. I've mirrored it along the X-axis. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit. And then using this little center widget, I can move it over a tad so that it's, in place. And there you have it. I have my arms and my hands. Now I can turn off mirror. And now that I've completed it, I can go ahead and I can cut it, select this layer here and put it in the foreground and then hit paste. And we've reached the next step of our stage of our model. Okay, so let me go back. I'm going to undo. And if there aren't any questions, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tweak the proportions a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead, hit D for display. I want the backdrop. I want bottom left. And I'm going to select this guy here. Okay. I'm going to put this layer in the background so I can see what I'm doing. And the forearm, does it look too big, too small? No, it actually looks okay. I don't know why it looked too big before. Actually, it looks okay, I think. So I think I'm in good shape. I'm going to leave it for right now. It looks okay. Okay, so let me go ahead and hit Shift Command Z to redo. And we'll leave this alone. There we go. So now I'll go ahead and I'll cut this. I'll go ahead and I'll select this layer and I'll hit Command V and put it in place. And now let's go ahead and hit Command S or Control S, as the case may be, to save it. We'll go ahead and look at this in just texture view, and we can see what we have here. Yeah, it's still the forearm looks a little bit too long, but I'm going to leave it for right now. So that's the next stage of our model here. Any questions before we end today? No? I'm checking here, make sure that everybody's here that I've selected. Yeah, no questions. The bevel tool is where? It's under multiply. So select multiply, and it's the top one here under expand, B for bevel. The bevel tool is your friend. You will be using the bevel tool a lot to add geometry. And again, the difference being, let me show you in a brand new layer here. I'm going to start with the box tool again to show you the difference between bevel and smooth shift. So if I start with the box tool again, I'm going to go ahead and activate, because that's what I had before, is that. And let's just zoom in here. You can see what's going on. No, okay. We have, let's go ahead and make sure that I have texture wire turned on so I can see them. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off the box tool. So again, for a single polygon, or it could be for a group, make sure that I have poly selected. I'll select this polygon and hit B for bevel, and then just click anywhere, and that adds the geometry. You can try to use the inset when the shift feature is here, but I've never had much luck doing that. So I prefer to add the geometry and then hit T for move, and then just pull it out like so. Okay, turn off, move, deselect. And now we want to add geometry for the, let's zoom out a little bit. Whoops. For his, the part that's over here, the mitten part. Now I'm going to go ahead and select both polygons, and I'm going to hit B for bevel, and I'm going to show you the difference. If I hit B for bevel and I click, now I hit T for move. I pull it out. Okay, I've got it again, and right now it looks the same, doesn't it? But if I go ahead and I select maybe H for stretch, and from, let's see, from the side view, I stretch, they're treated as one, but now watch what happens. I'll deselect, and I'll select one polygon and hit T for move. And I'm thinking the whole thing is going to move. And now when I move it, notice that I have two separate entities. It treated them separately. What smooth shift does, so let me undo that again. Let's redo that again. Let's select, deselect. Let's select these two again. And now instead under multiply, if I select smooth shift, which is right here, and I click and I hit T for move and I pull it out like so. And I turn off move, deselect, and now I select one polygon and I hit T for move and I move it. Notice that it's connected to the other polygon. They're joined together. That's the difference between the two. And you will be using bevel a lot, as well as smooth shift. We haven't used the knife tool or anything, but there are ways of starting with most models of starting with basic geometry and adding geometry to it. So you're always starting with a primitive. Later this semester, when we watch the tutorials on building a character head that I already have made available to you in modules, he uses box modeling, the very same thing. He does a great job on it. What's his name? Grimes is the last name. Todd Grimes. He does a super job demonstrating and making a head and doing it, very efficiently. And again, he starts with a basic box and he uses some of the basic tools and a lot of point manipulation in order to get the proportions just right. Okay. So let's go ahead and turn that off and let's go ahead and cut it. And let's go back to my model again. Okay. So next week, we'll continue. And I'll start building his torso here and his legs. The legs, again, get to be a little bit more difficult. It's like building the forearm, where we have to start with a basic shape, add geometry. And also I'll show you how to add his foot to the leg. I do it a little bit differently than maybe what I would normally do, but it's to show you how to use the weld tool. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this and call it a day. Everybody have a good weekend. And make sure you get that table and lamp to me, okay? Or if, for those of you who are here and you're working on Blender, make sure that you get the hammer done and start working on the donut. Okay, that's it. I'm going to stop recording and say goodbye to all of you. Okay.